My mother threw acid on my wedding dress the night before my ceremony and told me there would be no wedding. I was standing in the bridal suite of the Ashford Estate, the most beautiful wedding venue in Savannah, a place I had dreamed about since I was a little girl watching brides walk through its rose gardens. The room was filled with everything a bride could want: champagne chilling in a silver bucket, my makeup and hair supplies arranged perfectly on the vanity, my shoes, custom Louboutins with hand-sewn crystals, waiting by the door, and in the center of it all, hanging from a silk-padded hanger, was my wedding dress, a custom Vera Wang that had taken 8 months to create, hand-embroidered lace imported from France, 10,000 seed pearls sewn individually into the bodice, a 12-foot train that would float behind me as I walked down the aisle toward the man I loved. It was the most beautiful dress I had ever seen. It was perfect, and my mother was pouring industrial-strength drain cleaner all over it. "What are you doing?" I screamed, running toward her. But it was too late. The acid was already eating through the delicate fabric, dissolving the lace, melting the pearls into grotesque lumps, turning my dream dress into a chemical-scorched nightmare. My mother turned to face me, the empty bottle still in her hand, her face twisted with a rage I had seen many times before, but never quite like this. "If I can't control who you marry," she said, her voice eerily calm, "there won't be a wedding." I stared at her. This woman who had given birth to me, who had raised me, who was supposed to love me unconditionally, and I felt something I had never felt before. Not sadness, not despair, not the crushing heartbreak she was expecting. Clarity, pure, cold, crystalline clarity. I had spent my entire life trying to please this woman, trying to earn her approval, trying to be good enough, smart enough, successful enough to deserve her love. And she had just shown me, in the most brutal way possible, that her love had never been love at all. It had always been control. And tonight, she had finally lost it. I looked at the ruined dress, the fabric still smoking slightly where the acid was eating through layers of silk and tulle, and I didn't cry. I picked up my phone. I made one call, and then I began to plan. My name is Vivian Okafor. I am 32 years old. I was born in Atlanta, Georgia, the daughter of a Nigerian immigrant father and an African-American mother who had never wanted children but had me anyway, and had made sure I knew every day of my life that I was an inconvenience she had been forced to endure. My father died when I was 7, a sudden heart attack that took him in his sleep and left me alone with a woman who saw me as nothing more than an obstacle to the life she wanted. For 25 years, I had survived her. Her criticism, her manipulation, her emotional abuse, her constant, relentless campaign to make me feel worthless, ugly, stupid, undeserving of love or happiness or anything good. I had survived all of it. And tomorrow I was going to marry Marcus Chen, a man who loved me completely, who saw me clearly, who had helped me understand that I deserved so much more than the scraps of affection my mother occasionally threw my way. My mother hated Marcus, not because there was anything wrong with him. He was kind, successful, devoted, everything a mother should want for her daughter. She hated him because he had freed me. Because since meeting him, I had stopped seeking her approval. I had stopped letting her control my decisions. I had stopped being the scared, desperate little girl who would do anything for a crumb of maternal love. Marcus had shown me what real love looked like, and my mother couldn't forgive him for that. Let me tell you about the 25 years that led to this moment. My earliest memory of my mother is her screaming at me for spilling juice on the carpet. I was 3 years old, barely able to hold a cup properly, and she screamed at me for 20 minutes straight. "You ruin everything," she shrieked. "Everything you touch, you destroy. Why couldn't you have been normal? Why couldn't you have been the daughter I deserved?" I didn't understand what I had done wrong. I was 3. I had spilled juice. But I learned in that moment that my mother's love was not unconditional. It was transactional. It could be withdrawn at any moment for any reason, without warning or explanation. I spent the next 25 years trying to earn it back. I was the perfect student, straight A's from kindergarten through graduate school, because my mother had told me that smart daughters were valuable and stupid ones were worthless. I was the perfect daughter, cooking, cleaning, caring for her when she was sick, putting her needs ahead of my own in every situation, because she had told me that good daughters sacrificed everything for their mothers. I was the perfect employee, working 80-hour weeks, climbing the corporate ladder, achieving success after success, because she had told me that successful daughters reflected well on their mothers, and failures were an embarrassment. Nothing was ever enough. Every A should have been an A+. Every promotion should have come faster. Every achievement was immediately overshadowed by whatever I hadn't yet accomplished. "Why aren't you married yet?" she asked when I made partner at my law firm at 30. "Why haven't you given me grandchildren?" she demanded when I bought my first house. "What's wrong with you that no man wants to stay?" she sneered when my relationships ended. Relationships she had sabotaged, though I didn't fully understand that until later. My mother was a master manipulator. She knew exactly how to make me feel worthless while maintaining plausible deniability. Every insult was phrased as concern. Every criticism was delivered as helpful advice. Every act of sabotage was framed as protection. "I'm only saying this because I love you," she would say after tearing apart my appearance, my choices, my life. "I'm just trying to help," she would claim after inserting herself into situations where she wasn't wanted or needed. "You're too sensitive," she would insist when I finally gathered the courage to push back. "I don't know why you're making such a big deal out of nothing." Gaslighting, I would later learn it was called. Emotional abuse, narcissistic parenting. There were names for what she had done to me, clinical terms, diagnostic criteria, a whole body of psychological literature explaining exactly how mothers like mine operated and why. But knowing the names didn't undo the damage. 25 years of being told I was worthless had left scars that would take a lifetime to heal. I met Marcus Chen at a legal conference in Washington, D.C. 3 years ago. He was a corporate attorney from San Francisco in town for the same intellectual property seminar I was attending. We ended up at the same lunch table, made conversation, discovered we had the same dark sense of humor and the same taste in obscure legal theory. By the end of the conference, he had asked for my number. By the end of the month, we were talking every day. By the end of the year, he had moved across the country to be with me. "You're worth uprooting my entire life for," he said when I expressed concern about the move. "You're worth anything." No one had ever said anything like that to me before. I didn't know how to respond. Marcus saw through me in a way no one else ever had. He saw the trauma I carried, the wounds I tried to hide, the little girl inside me still desperately seeking approval from a mother who would never give it. And he loved me anyway. More than that, he helped me heal. He encouraged me to see a therapist. He held me when the sessions brought up painful memories. He stood by me when I finally started setting boundaries. With my mother, when I stopped answering her every call, when I stopped rearranging my life around her demands. "You deserve better than how she treats you," Marcus said. "You've always deserved better. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you know that." When he proposed, I said yes without hesitation. For the first time in my life, I felt truly loved. And my mother couldn't stand it. The wedding planning had been a nightmare. My mother had inserted herself into every decision, overriding my choices, dismissing my preferences, treating the wedding as if it were her event rather than mine. "You can't have the ceremony outside. What if it rains? You can't serve that food. What will people think? You can't wear your hair like that. You'll look ridiculous. You can't invite those people. They're not important enough." Every conversation became a battle. Every decision became a negotiation. Every moment of joy was immediately followed by criticism, judgment, demands for change. And always, always, the underlying message: "You're doing it wrong. You're not good enough. You need me to fix this for you." Marcus wanted to elope. He suggested it multiple times, each time more seriously than the last. "Your mother is making you miserable," he said. "We don't need any of this. We can get married tomorrow, just the two of us, and start our lives without all this drama." "I can't do that to her," I said. "She's my mother. If I elope, she'll never forgive me." "She doesn't forgive you for anything anyway. What's one more thing?" He wasn't wrong, but I couldn't bring myself to cut her out entirely. Not yet. Not when some small, stupid part of me still hoped that maybe, somehow, she would change. That maybe seeing me happy would finally make her happy for me. that maybe, at my wedding, she would finally say the words I had been waiting my entire life to hear. I'm proud of you. I love you. You're enough. I should have known better. The night before. The wedding was supposed to be my time. Marcus was at his bachelor party, a low-key dinner with his groomsmen at his favorite restaurant. I was supposed to be having my own celebration, a quiet evening with my bridesmaids, champagne and laughter, and the excited anticipation of the biggest day of my life. But my mother had insisted on coming. I should be there the night before my only daughter's wedding, she said, in that tone that made it clear refusal was not an option. What kind of mother would I be if I wasn't? The kind of mother who might actually let me have one evening of peace, I thought, but didn't say. She had been drinking since she arrived. Not drunk. My mother never lost control in public, but loosened, her usual veneer of civility wearing thin. My bridesmaids had made excuses to leave early. They knew my mother. They had seen how she treated me. They couldn't understand why I kept her in my life, but they respected my choices, even when those choices made no sense. By 10 o'clock, it was just the two of us in the bridal suite, and that's when she made her move. I need to say something, she announced, her voice carrying the familiar edge that always preceded her cruelest observations. Can it wait until tomorrow, Mom? I'm exhausted. No, it can't wait, because tomorrow you're making the biggest mistake of your life, and I refuse to stand by and watch. I turned to face her, my heart already sinking. What are you talking about? This wedding, this man, this entire charade of a relationship. You're not ready for marriage, Vivian. You're not capable of being a wife. You're going to fail just like you fail at everything, and you're going to come crawling back to me, and I'll have to pick up the pieces just like I always do. Mom, he doesn't love you. He can't possibly love you. Look at you. You're nothing special. You're ordinary. You're the kind of woman men settle for when they can't do any better. The words were so familiar. She had been saying variations of them my entire life. But tonight, something was different. Tonight, I didn't believe her. You're wrong, I said, surprising myself with the steadiness of my voice. Marcus loves me. He sees me, really sees me, in a way you never have. And tomorrow, I'm going to marry him, and we're going to build a beautiful life together, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. My mother's face contorted with rage. Nothing I can do? She grabbed the bottle of drain cleaner. I hadn't even noticed she'd brought it in, hidden in her oversized purse, and before I could react, she was at my dress, pouring the corrosive liquid all over the pristine white fabric. If I can't control who you marry, she screamed, there won't be a wedding. The acid ate through the dress in seconds. The smell was overwhelming, chemical, acrid, burning my nostrils even from across the room. And my mother stood there, triumphant, waiting for me to break. I didn't break. Instead, something inside me finally healed, because in that moment, watching my mother destroy the physical symbol of my happiness out of pure spite, I finally understood what I should have understood years ago. She didn't love me. She had never loved me. She was incapable of love. And I was finally, completely, irrevocably free. The phone call I made was to my Aunt Grace, my father's sister, the woman who had been more of a mother to me than my actual mother had ever been. Aunt Grace had been my refuge throughout childhood. When my mother's cruelty became too much, when I needed somewhere to hide, when I needed someone to remind me that I wasn't the monster my mother claimed I was, Aunt Grace was there. She answered on the second ring, despite the late hour. Vivian, what's wrong? Mom destroyed my dress, poured acid on it. The wedding is tomorrow and I have nothing to wear. A pause. Then, I'll be there in 20 minutes. Don't move, don't call anyone else. And Vivian? Yes? Trust me. She hung up. I sat in the bridal suite, surrounded by the chemical smell of destruction, and I waited. My mother had fled after I picked up the phone. She knew what she had done, knew the consequences if others found out, knew that her mask of respectable motherhood was about to slip. I let her go. I was done chasing her approval. I was done trying to fix what couldn't be fixed. I was done. Aunt Grace arrived exactly 20 minutes later. She took one look at the destroyed dress, at my face, at the empty bottle of drain cleaner still lying on the floor, and she nodded grimly. I always knew she would do something like this someday. I just hoped I was wrong. What am I going to do? The wedding is in 12 hours. I don't have a dress. I don't have time to find one. Maybe Marcus was right. Maybe we should just elope. Vivian. Aunt Grace took my hands, her grip steady and warm. Do you want to marry Marcus tomorrow? In front of your friends, your family, the people who love you? Yes, but then you will, and it will be more beautiful than anything your mother tried to destroy. She smiled, a mysterious, knowing smile. Come with me. I followed her to her car, confused but trusting. Aunt Grace had never let me down. She drove us to her house, a Victorian home on the outskirts of Savannah that had been in our family for generations. I had spent countless weekends there as a child, hiding from my mother's rages, finding peace in Aunt Grace's garden and library and kitchen that always smelled like baking bread. She led me upstairs, to a room I had never been allowed to enter, my grandmother's old bedroom, preserved exactly as it had been when she died 20 years ago. Your grandmother loved you, Aunt Grace said, opening the closet doors. From the moment you were born, she saw something special in you. She used to say that you had your father's kind heart and your grandfather's strength. She wanted you to have something of hers for your wedding day. She pulled out a garment bag, old but well preserved, wrapped in protective covering. She left this for you in her will, with instructions that it be given to you when you got married. I unzipped the bag with trembling hands, and I gasped. Inside was a wedding dress, but not just any wedding dress. It was my grandmother's wedding dress, from her marriage to my grandfather 60 years ago, hand-sewn by her own mother from fabric she had saved during the Depression. Delicate lace, yellowed slightly with age but still beautiful. Tiny buttons running down the back. A modest train, elegant rather than extravagant. It was nothing like the Vera Wang my mother had destroyed. It was better. She wore this dress when she married the love of her life, Aunt Grace said softly. She raised 4 children in that marriage, including your father. She was happy for 47 years until your grandfather passed, and she wanted you to have that same happiness. I held the dress against my body, feeling the weight of history, of love, of generations of Okafor women who had loved and been loved. It's perfect, I whispered. There's more. Aunt Grace pulled out a jewelry box. Inside was my grandmother's pearl necklace, the one she had worn in every photo I had ever seen of her. Something old, something borrowed, Aunt Grace said, fastening the pearls around my neck, though I suppose the dress counts as both. I can't believe this. I can't believe she saved this for me. She knew, Vivian. She knew what your mother was. She tried to protect you as much as she could, but your mother was clever, and your father was blind to her faults. After he died, Aunt Grace shook her head. We all failed you. We should have fought harder to take you away from her. You didn't fail me. You were always there when I needed you. Not enough. Never enough. She cupped my face in her hands, hands that had soothed my nightmares, dried my tears, held me when my mother's cruelty became unbearable. But tomorrow you're going to walk down that aisle in your grandmother's dress, surrounded by people who actually love you, and your mother isn't going to be anywhere near that ceremony. She'll try to come. She'll cause a scene. No, she won't. Aunt Grace's voice was steel. I've already made some calls. Your mother won't be getting within 100 yards of that venue tomorrow. I promise you that. What did you do? What I should have done years ago. I protected my niece. The next morning, I woke up in Aunt Grace's guest bedroom, having slept more peacefully than I had in months. My bridesmaids arrived at 8, having been redirected from the venue's bridal suite to Aunt Grace's house. They gasped when they saw the vintage dress, when they heard what my mother had done, when they realized what today really meant. We're not just going to a wedding, my maid of honor, Patricia, said. We're going to a victory celebration. The hair and makeup team arrived next. They worked with renewed purpose, knowing the story, knowing what was at stake. The photographer came early, wanting to capture the getting ready process in this beautiful old house rather than the generic bridal suite. By 11 o'clock, I was ready. I looked in the mirror and saw someone I barely recognized, not because of the makeup or the hair or the dress, though all of those were beautiful, but because for the first time in my life, I looked genuinely happy. Not the performed happiness I had learned to fake for my mother's benefit. Real happiness. The kind that comes from knowing you're exactly where you're supposed to be. The ceremony was scheduled for noon. We arrived at the Ashford estate at 11:45. My bridesmaids, Aunt Grace, and me. The venue was even more beautiful in the daylight, the rose gardens in full bloom, the white chairs arranged perfectly on the lawn, the arch decorated with flowers Marcus and I had chosen together. 300 guests were already seated. They turned as we approached, and I heard gasps, whispers, murmurs of surprise. Some of them knew what my mother had done. The story had spread overnight, passed from bridesmaid to bridesmaid, family member to family member. By now, half the guests knew that my dress had been destroyed, and no one knew what I would wear. The other half just knew that something felt different, special, unexpected. I took my place at the back of the aisle, Aunt Grace by my side. She would be walking me down the aisle, having taken the place my father would have held if he were still alive. "Ready?" she whispered. "I've never been more ready for anything in my life." The music began, and I walked toward Marcus, toward my future, toward the life I had always deserved. I saw Marcus's face first. He had been told about the dress. I had called him last night after Aunt Grace's revelation, needing to share the story, needing his voice. He had listened in stunned silence, then said the words I needed to hear. "I would marry you if you showed up in a garbage bag. The dress doesn't matter. You matter." But now, seeing me in my grandmother's vintage gown, he wasn't just supportive. He was overwhelmed. Tears streamed down his face as I walked toward him. His groomsmen were trying not to cry. The officiant was discreetly wiping his eyes. And when I finally reached him, when he took my hands in his, he whispered, "You're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." This isn't the dress we planned. This dress is better. It has history. It has love. It has your grandmother's blessing. He squeezed my hands. And it has a story that everyone here will remember forever. He was right. The ceremony was perfect, not despite the chaos of the previous night, but because of it. Every word of the vows felt more meaningful. Every moment felt more precious. Every tear was a release of years of pain, replaced by joy, so pure it hurt. But the most memorable moment came at the reception. After the first dance, after the toasts, after the dinner had been served and the cake had been cut, I stood up to address our guests. "Thank you all for being here today," I began. "I know many of you have heard rumors about what happened last night. I want to tell you the truth." The room went quiet. Last night, my mother destroyed my wedding dress. She poured acid on it, hoping to prevent this wedding from happening. She told me that if she couldn't control who I married, there wouldn't be a wedding at all. Gasps throughout the room. Some guests had heard fragments of the story, but hearing it directly from me was different. For most of my life, I believed my mother when she said I was worthless. I believed her when she said no one would ever truly love me. I believed her when she said I needed her approval to be happy. I looked at Marcus, who nodded encouragingly. Last night, when I watched her destroy that dress, I finally understood something I should have understood years. Ego. Her hatred has nothing to do with me. It has nothing to do with anything I did or didn't do. It's about her own emptiness, her own fear, her own inability to love. I raised my champagne glass. Today, I am wearing my grandmother's wedding dress, a dress she saved for 60 years, a dress she left specifically for me in her will, because she believed I deserved the same happiness she had found. And I want to toast to her, and to my Aunt Grace who gave it to me last night, and to every person in this room who taught me what real love looks like. 300 glasses raised in response. To family, the real kind, the kind you choose, the kind that lifts you up instead of tearing you down. To family. To family! 300 voices echoed, and then I said the part that I had planned all morning. One more thing. The room quieted again. For anyone here who is currently dealing with a parent, a family member, or anyone who treats them the way my mother treated me, I want you to know that you're not alone, and you're not crazy, and you deserve better. I felt tears forming, but pushed through. I spent 25 years trying to earn love from someone who was incapable of giving it. I blamed myself for her cruelty. I twisted myself into knots trying to be good enough, smart enough, successful enough to finally deserve her approval. I looked around the room, at my bridesmaids, who had watched me struggle for years, at Marcus's family, who had welcomed me unconditionally, at friends and colleagues and relatives who had shown up today to celebrate love. The acid my mother poured on that dress was the best thing she ever did for me, because it finally freed me. It finally showed me beyond any doubt that her behavior was never about me. It was always about her. And now I'm standing here, in my grandmother's dress, married to the love of my life, surrounded by people who actually love me, and my mother, who tried so hard to destroy this moment, isn't here. She didn't win. She didn't break me. She just finally showed me that I don't need her anymore. I raised my glass one more time. To freedom. The room erupted in applause. People were crying. Not just a few people, but dozens. The photographer who had been documenting the toast was openly weeping. My bridesmaids were holding each other. Even Marcus's stoic father was wiping his eyes. But the most unexpected reaction came from someone I didn't even notice at first. A woman near the back of the room who I didn't recognize, who had been watching the entire speech with tears streaming down her face. She approached me as the applause died down. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said, her voice trembling. "I'm Catherine. I'm a friend of one of Marcus's colleagues. I wasn't going to say anything, but I have to tell you—" She paused, composing herself. "My mother is the same way, exactly the same. And I've never heard anyone describe it so perfectly. I've never heard anyone survive. It's so beautifully." "I'm sorry you understand," I said. "No, I'm grateful. Grateful to see that it's possible to escape, to build a real family, to be happy despite everything." She hugged me. This stranger, this woman who understood my pain in a way most people never could. "Thank you," she whispered. "You have no idea how much I needed to hear that today." I hugged her back. We're never as alone as they make us feel. The aftermath of the wedding was everything I had hoped for and nothing my mother had feared. The story of the dress went viral, not because I sought publicity, but because stories like mine resonate with people who have lived through similar experiences. A journalist at the wedding, a friend of Marcus's brother, wrote an article about it. The article was shared thousands of times. My toast was excerpted, quoted, passed from person to person. Within a week, I had received hundreds of messages from strangers who had recognized their own mothers in my story. Hundreds of people who had believed, for years, that they were the only ones, that their mother's cruelty was their fault, that they were somehow broken. I answered every message I could, because I remembered what it felt like to believe those lies, because I knew how much it would have meant during my darkest moments to hear someone say, "It's not your fault. You're not alone. There is life on the other side of this pain." As for my mother, she was arrested that night. Aunt Grace's phone calls had included one to the police, reporting the destruction of property and potential assault. The drain cleaner she had used was a corrosive substance capable of causing serious chemical burns. If I had been standing closer to the dress when she poured it, I could have been badly injured. My mother was charged with destruction of property, reckless endangerment, and criminal harassment. She tried to claim it was an accident, that she hadn't meant to destroy the dress, that I was exaggerating for attention. No one believed her. The security cameras at the Ashford estate had captured her entering with the bottle of drain cleaner hidden in her purse. Her statements to me, "If I can't control who you marry, there won't be a wedding," had been heard by a staff member in the hallway. The evidence was overwhelming. She pleaded guilty to avoid a trial, receiving 2 years of probation, mandatory psychiatric evaluation, and a restraining order that prohibited her from contacting me, Marcus, or any future children we might have. The restraining order was the greatest gift the legal system could have given me. I finally had official permission to never see my mother again. 2 years have passed since that wedding. Marcus and I live in a house not far from Aunt Grace's Victorian, close enough to visit regularly, far enough to have our own space. We're expecting our first child in 3 months, a daughter we plan to name after my grandmother. I still have hard days. The trauma of 25 years doesn't disappear overnight. Sometimes I hear my mother's voice in my head telling me I'm not good enough, that I'll fail, that no one truly loves me. But those voices are quieter now, easier to recognize as lies, easier to replace with the truth that Marcus, Aunt Grace, and everyone else who actually loves me have shown me. I am enough. I was always enough. And my mother's inability to see that was her failure, not mine. The wedding dress, my grandmother's dress, hangs in a special climate-controlled closet in our house. I've had it professionally preserved, cleaned of the tears and champagne stains from that perfect day. I look at it sometimes. I remember the moment I first saw it in Aunt Grace's closet. I remember walking down the aisle toward Marcus. I remember the toast, the applause, the strangers who told me I had given them hope. And I remember the acid-destroyed Vera Wang, melted and ruined in the bridal suite at the Ashford estate. My mother meant that acid as destruction, but it was actually liberation. She meant to show me that she had power over my happiness, but she actually showed me that she had no power at all. I kept a piece of the destroyed dress, one small swatch that wasn't completely destroyed, just scorched at the edges. It sits in a frame next to my grandmother's dress in the closet, a reminder of what I survived and what I became. Marcus asked me once why I kept it. Because I never want to forget, I told him. Not the pain, I want to forget the pain, but I want to remember that I'm stronger than she ever thought I was. I want to remember that no one can destroy me unless I let them. You're the strongest person I know, Marcus said. I learned to be strong from surviving her. In a twisted way, she made me who I am. You made yourself who you are. She just gave you obstacles to overcome. He was right. He usually is. Last month, I received a letter. It was from my mother, handwritten, 8 pages long. The restraining order prevented her from contacting me directly, but she had sent it through her attorney, claiming it was a therapeutic exercise recommended by her psychiatrist. The letter was an apology, sort of. It was mostly excuses, explanations of her difficult childhood, her own abusive mother, the trauma that had made her the way she was. There were admissions of wrongdoing buried under layers of justification and self-pity. I'm sorry for what I did to your dress, she wrote. But you have to understand, I was desperate. I was losing you. I couldn't bear the thought of you not needing me anymore. She had never understood the difference between being needed and being wanted. She had confused control with love. And even now, after 2 years of psychiatric treatment, she still didn't really see what she had done wrong. I read the letter once, then I burned it. Not out of anger, not out of spite, but because I had already done the work of forgiving her, not for her sake, but for mine. I had already processed the trauma, mourned the mother I deserved but never had, and built a life that didn't include her. Her letter didn't deserve space in that life. Her words didn't deserve power over my peace. So I burned it, and I watched the ashes float away on the wind, and I felt absolutely nothing. And that, feeling nothing, was the greatest victory of all. If this story resonates with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and whether you've ever had to transform destruction into liberation. Like and subscribe for more stories about survival, healing, and the power of choosing the family that chooses you. If I can't control who you marry, there won't be a wedding. That's what my mother screamed as she poured acid on my wedding dress. I stood there holding the ruined fabric, watching my dreams dissolve. I didn't cry. I picked up my phone, made one call. And the next morning, 300 guests arrived as something no one expected. Instead of the destroyed Vera Wang, I walked down the aisle in my grandmother's 60-year-old wedding dress, a dress she had saved her entire life and left to me in her will. Even the photographer started crying. My mother wasn't there. She'd been arrested the night before. The acid she meant as destruction became my liberation. The dress she destroyed was replaced by something better. The wedding she tried to prevent became the most beautiful day of my life. And her restraining order, the greatest gift the legal system ever gave me. If I can't control who you marry, she was right. She couldn't control anything anymore. Not my wedding, not my happiness, not my life. And that is exactly how it should be.